2, 1.
Does $1 or 2 really make a big difference in the large scheme of things? What if those few dollars were multiplied by a few million? At the very surface of the idea of raising the minimum wage, it may seem like a good and even beneficial idea. As a minimum wage worker myself, I'd much prefer to earn $9 an hour than $7.25 an hour. However, this rise would have a larger negative impact than it would a positive one. The minimum wage should not be raised for 4 main points that I will be talking about in my speech. 1. It raises unnecessary for most recipients. 2. Businesses will struggle due to inflation. 3. Competition will become more intense. And 4. The raise will affect the macroeconomy in a negative way. Although the intentions of raising the minimum wage may be good, the results will fall short of being beneficial. First, I'll be discussing why a raise is unnecessary for most recipients. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a government-owned and operated resource, as many as 63.5% of Americans in poverty do not work at all. Therefore, over 60% of the people that we are initially trying to help by raising the minimum wage are completely unaffected by the raise. It goes on to explain that 97% of minimum wage workers are under the age of 25. Of those people, about 10% of those do not have a high school diploma, 4% have only a high school diploma, and only about 2% are considered to be college graduates. It goes on to explain that usually younger, unmarried workers are more likely to have minimum wage jobs than those who are older and who are married. According to Tammy Lobai's article, The Impact of a $9 Minimum Wage, a recently published and researched article, for those who are married and who are raising a family off the minimum wage, they will only earn about $18,000 a year. This is not enough to raise a family of 4. It is still considered to be below the poverty line. So overall, raising the minimum wage would be unnecessary for most recipients because it would not be enough to help those who actually need it, and the majority of everyone else who is earning the minimum wage is already above the poverty line. Raising the minimum wage would not only be unhelpful, but it would also harm small businesses. So moving on to my second point, I'll be discussing why small businesses will struggle due to inflation. According to Tammy Lobai's same article, The Impact of a $9 Minimum Wage, businesses will now be paying each of their minimum wage employees about $18,000 a year. In order to make up for this money that they will now be losing paying their employees, they will have to make it up in a different way. Mark Wilson's article, The Negative Effects of Minimum Wage Laws, a well-rounded and well-researched source, states that in order to keep up with their new paying out prices, they're going to have to intake more money they'll have to take care of by raising the prices of their goods and services. Since their prices will be higher, people will be more likely to go to larger, more competitive stores. And if they do choose to stay at the smaller store, they are going to choose to spend less money, and be less competitive in spend less money on what they're going to want to buy there. So overall, small businesses will struggle due to inflation because in order to keep up with higher pay, prices on their goods and services are going to have to rise, which will eventually cause the small businesses to close their doors because they will not be as competitive as the larger stores. Small businesses will not be the only ones getting hurt. Those who we were initially trying to help with the raise will be getting hurt as well. So my third point I will be discussing is that the competition will become more intense. According to Mark Wilson's same article, The Negative Effects of Minimum Wage Laws, over 70 years of research shows that if the minimum wage increases, then employment will simultaneously decrease. James Shirk, the senior policy analysis in labor economics, states in his article, What is Minimum Wage? Its History and Effects on the Economy, that more specifically, it is actually the employment of less skilled workers and disabled workers that does decrease. This happens because as the minimum wage rises, people who normally deem themselves to be above those minimum wage jobs will now consider them as a possible option. So as higher educated and more skilled workers come in to take the jobs, it's going to become more difficult for the less skilled workers to actually get the jobs. So as I previously explained, the competition will become a lot more intense, especially for those with disabilities and low skill levels, as higher skilled workers now see the minimum wage job as a possible option. Unfortunately, the higher competition for these low wage jobs does not lead to an improved economy. The fourth and final point that I will be making is that the macroeconomy will have a negative effect. Continuing on James Shirk's same article, What is Minimum Wage? Its History and Effects on the Economy, He states that even a moderate minimum wage increase will have only an overall impact that is really small. Even though it is small, it will be a negative one. He states that about 1/10 of minimum wage jobs will be eliminated if any rise were to be initiated. According to Sabia and Berkhauser's article, Minimum Wages, Poverty, Will a Minimum Wage Help the Working Poor, from the Southern Economic Journal, she states that wage increases have thus far provided little more than symbolic support from the government to the population. It does not actually target the working poor. Instead, it will affect more of the middle class. So overall, the raise will have an effect on the macroeconomy in a negative way because it will cause job loss and it affects way too few people for it to actually be relevant. So, in conclusion, should those who we claim to be helping by lowering the minimum wage be forced to suffer even more just so that the government can feel good about helping out? I, for one, do not believe that this is morally correct. To help prevent the raise from happening, I ask that you educate yourselves and others more on the subject so that if ever asked to vote on the subject, we can say no to raising the minimum wage. The minimum wage should not be raised, and the 4 reasons as to why are: 1, the raise is unnecessary for most recipients. 2, small businesses will struggle due to inflation. 3, the competition will become more intense. And 4, the raise will affect the macroeconomy in a negative way. Thank you.